Saludos and salutations, Broncos Country, and welcome into another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. Today, ladies and gentlemen, do we have a treat for you today? Today, Libre and I are going to be talking about the rules, and more rules. What do I mean by that? Basically, there are a lot of proposed rules that different teams around the league want the NFL owners or powers to be or whoever to kind of bring to fruition for this upcoming 2025 season. Some of them are a little bit crazy by some people. Some of them make sense by other people. We're going to get to the bottom of it, just like we do everything here on the show. Plus, we're going to get to anything and everything related, Broncos talk related, stumbling on my words, and also your favorite show, part of the segment, which is Broncos Overtime at the very end of the show. So please make sure that your beer is cold, your food is warm, because you do not want to miss a second of everything we have to go over today. So that, ladies and Jays, that's what I would love about live video. You mess it up, you can't edit it. You just roll with the punches. But ladies and gentlemen, get ready because here we go. And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adan Diaz, and I'm the owner and proprietor and host of said show called Broncos Talk. And joining me to my left or right, depending on which way you're watching, is my co-host, Bronco Libre. Bronco Libre, my friend, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good, man. You know what? I actually forgot we were supposed to start after the intro by saying, what's happening?
That's right. What's happening?
The one thing I forgot to write down on my list of notes, but don't worry, we'll get it. We'll get there. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. It is another great day here in Broncos Country. Well, great if you're a Broncos fan, not so much if your skin is itching because you cannot wait for this season to start. But before we get to all that and everything that is here on the program, in case this is your first time listening or watching us here live, we have a couple of things we have to get out of the way before we get to all the good and ready, kind of like a Little Caesar's pizza, I guess. But basically, yeah. But basically, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we'd like to ask you to please subscribe, share, comment, and like here on the Orange and Blue Network, especially on this show. If there's anything that we haven't answered or could answer for you, which is during the fact or after the fact, Libre and I are always happy and down to talk about all things football related. Also, there are plenty of other good shows that you can watch on this network as well, just in case we are not your cup of tea. Totally, it's no problem. No feelings hurt. Also, this is a simulcast, so we're also live streaming on the MHRT network. So please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all their programming and shows as well. You know, Mundungus and the guys over there, they work really hard to bring you guys Broncos content every single day, especially, and that goes for everybody out in Broncos Country right now, you know, because this is the part of the off season where we kind of hit that dry patch where we're trying to find ways to keep you guys entertained. And we thank you guys for continuing to come and be with us and just having to hear us listen, rant and ramble about any and all things football. For those of you listening to us on the audio version, if you're not able to watch us here live, we ask that you please give us 5-star reviews. Send us your screenshot and send it to our socials there so we can give you a shout out. Mine is at a 6'10" Mexican on Twitter. Bronco Libre is Bronco Libre at Bronco Libre 5280. Give us a follow, send us a message. Happy in all things. We're always happy to talk about with you guys for football. For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. And then we would like to give a shout out to the sponsor, not the host, the sponsor of today's show, which is Dubby. Ladies and gentlemen, you might be asking yourself, what in the world is W? Well, I'm here to tell you that W is basically formulated to give you focus and energy with no jitters or crash. Their formula contains vitamins, amino acids, and nootropics, including the patented neurofactor formula. They have no calories, no sugar, no maltodextrin, no fillers, and no artificial colors. Ladies and gentlemen, it's basically all the good stuff without all the bad. You know, it's all the bad stuff they say that you put in coffee or that they put in coffee that when you have it made for you, or energy drinks for that matter. That's where W comes in for you. They have so many delicious flavors for you guys to choose from. And to show you guys something even better, our friends over at the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast, Johnny Baki and Isaiah Henderson, they want to give you guys 10% off your next W order. So please make sure, you use the code NRWOB10 to get 10% off at checkout. Again, that code is NRWOB10 to get your 10% off at checkout. Shout out to W for being a sponsor on this show and all the shows here on the Orange and Blue Network. And of course, thanks to the guys over at the Nothing Rhymes with podcast for hooking you and me up with 10% off your next order. I think that's everything.
I'm winded. I don't know about you, but I'm winded after all of that.
I'm tired, bro. I think I could use a nap. Oh, and also before I forget, shout out to all of our TikTok audience out there. If you guys are listening or hear us, whether you're watching us through the YouTube or Twitter or all the other apps, please make sure you give us a like, say hello. If you have any questions that you want us to answer for you, or any comments or ideas or whatever you guys want to talk about, please feel free to point them out to us on the show, either through my side or through Libre's side, because I didn't know that our chats were different. I thought that once we merged, we saw the same thing, but apparently we don't.
We don't.
So,
yeah.
And Libre is the more popular of the two of us. So I think it's the mask. I think chicks really dig the mask.
It's because it's hiding something fail. I'm just saying.
Oh, in that case, I should go to Walmart and buy like a whole stack of them. Oh, but to make me a mask, they'd have to take like one of yours and like sew two of them together, you know?
Cabazon.
Cabazon, yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, like I said at the beginning of today's show, or at the opening, I should say, today, Libre and I are going to talk about the topic basically being rules, and more rules. I stumbled upon this video earlier today that talked about, I think it's all the proposed rules, at least from what was in the video. And we're going to we're going to listen to the video. And after every single rule, we're going to pause it. Libre and I are going to give our comments or ideas or suggestions, opinions or whatever. And if you guys have them on the chat, TikTok or on live, please make sure you put it out there before we move on. And then that's basically what we're going to move down the line. Now, these proposed rule changes affect everybody, and there have to be put up. I think it has to be a unanimous vote by every single one of the NFL owners or the powers that be or whatever in order for them to come to fruition. Okay, so it's through through TikTok. So we're going to listen through it to that. But Libre, have you heard about any of these proposed rule changes before we get started?
You know, the number one I think that everyone is talking about is the tush push. I think it's Indy is the one that submitted the request of banning the tush push. I'll wait to get my thing because I'm sure that's on there, because that's the big one that I noticed. And I think there's one other one that I heard and I can't remember. I think it's the overtime rules, I think.
Right.
But I can't remember 100% what it was. And I can't remember who submitted it, what team submitted it itself, but those are the two that I have, but that I've heard about. I know there's probably many more that they might have submitted or whatnot. That I haven't heard or read more into it at this point.
Right. Well, I mean, basically for me, like I have read a couple of these, but I don't remember like a whole lot specifically, in terms of, like, I did read a couple of the comments, if that makes any sense, but I don't know much about like if it. I'm trying to. I don't know what the hell to say, to be honest with you. But I think once we watch the video, we'll definitely go through them. So I do apologize for the comments. I can't hide the comments. So, but some of them I got to admit are pretty funny. All right. So Libre, are you ready?
Let's do this.
All right, here we go with the very first rule. Can you hear it?
I cannot.
Oh, I muted it.
The Detroit Lions proposed eliminating the automatic first down resulting from defensive holding and illegal contact.
I hear it.
Currently, such infractions grant the offense 5 yards
I've seen it already,
first
so I
down,
don't need to hear it.
regardless of the yards needed to convert. The Lions suggest maintaining the 5-yard penalty, but removing the automatic first down, unless penalty yardage moves past the line to gain. This proposal aims to balance competitive equity by preventing offenses from gaining significant advantages due to minor defensive errors. Tush push.
Okay, so the first one was basically talking about the getting rid of the rule where if it's like, for example, if a team has 1 through 5, they have it's 1st and 15. If the defense commits a foul that's like 5 yards, they want to get rid of it automatically being a first down.
Yeah.
And there's different calls that basically, what is that? Defense? I think it's defensive holding, pass interference. Trying to think of which other ones.
Well, the pass interference, wouldn't that be at the spot foul itself? Or is that like if it's still within the 1st and 15, if it happens within that first and the first 10 yards? Or is it because I could see a holding where, I remember like how they have it where it is 1st and 5, or they do it's 1st and 10 and there's a holding and it's just that, how you said, automatic first down. I actually like this rule. Like if it's only 5 yards and if it's first and, or we'll just say third and 6, and they had that, how it is now, they're automatically going to get a first down because of that play. It's because of that penalty. I agree with this. I think this should be changed because if it's only 5-yard penalty and if they haven't exceeded, they're going to have a repeat of that third down, or it'd be 3rd and 1 at that point.
I have to disagree with you, Libre. I think that rule is fine the way it is. And granted, I know I'll probably be kicking myself if that happens to the Broncos defense where they commit a foul and or the opposite way, where the Broncos offense gets a foul in their favor, but it's not an automatic first down and it's still 3rd down and they have to go. It's like 3rd and 4. It's still 3rd down, regardless of how many more yards you have to go for the conversion. So me personally, I think that rule is fine the way it is, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to give you want to get certain quarterbacks off the field. The less time you give a quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes out there or Jalen Hurts or any of the good quarterbacks, you want to keep them off the field less. Does that make any sense? I know that doesn't really make any sense to a lot of people, but basically that rule, if they change it, would make opposing offenses, or any offense for that matter, work harder instead of relying on the flag for the automatic first down conversion. I don't think it'll pass. I think that it's still probably, I don't know. I just don't think that needs to be changed. What are your thoughts on that, Libre?
For me, like I was saying, is I prefer I like that rule change itself. Just because I think it's still a little confusing on where we're at on this rule change because we don't have a lot of detailed information on it. But I feel that with this change as well, offenses are not going to try to get that, or wide receivers or something like that saying that they were held and trying to do a flop, how LeBron likes to do it in the NBA, to try to draw those type of penalties to help extend their drive. And I feel that this will help prevent that from happening. Say if it's how we were just talking about, a 3rd and 15 situation, and they're trying to get out there, and if they get held, now it's just third and 10. Like, I prefer to have that itself. Make the offense earn that first down, and not just automatically giving them that first down when it's, like you said, it's only 5 yards, as opposed to you're needing 15 yards to get that first down itself. That's just me personally.
Well, I think that the Lions were the ones that proposed this. I'm trying to remember if during their season they had anything come against them where that rule hurt their chances of having their defense get out the field. I can't remember because I don't watch every Lions game, obviously. But like, I think what the Lions are trying to infer is that basically, again, it would make offenses work harder for the first down instead of always relying on the flag. This also could come back to being what the Chiefs did, because the Chiefs relied so much on ref calls last year. So much. Probably more than any team in the freaking league, if I'm being honest. So that's where I think that stems from. Will it pass, though? I don't think so. Libre says it probably does. Unless I hope I'm not speaking out of place. I don't think it will, but it'll be interesting to see how that rule comes in. Libre, anything you want to add before we move to the next one?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm just explaining to TikTok real quick. Somebody said that they missed the rule change.
Okay.
But again,
we can play it over.
Yeah, just go ahead and play it over again real quick, so that they could hear it.
I think I fixed the audio issue too. So all right, here we go.
Perfect.
Eliminating the first down penalty. The Detroit Lions proposed eliminating the automatic first down resulting from defensive holding and illegal contact penalties. Currently, such infractions grant the offense 5 yards and an automatic first down, regardless of the yards needed to convert. The Lions suggest maintaining the 5-yard penalty but removing the automatic first down, unless penalty yardage moves past the line to gain. This proposal aims to balance competitive equity by preventing offenses from gaining significant advantages due to minor defensive errors. Tush push. The Packers.
I was muted. So I heard at that time. So basically, it's just trying to say that basically they want. There are teams that do take advantage of that. Okay. And I missed that part a little bit. But however, if that does come to pass, I don't know if that'll be necessarily a good thing. But so many teams are so used to it. Even the Broncos. Okay. The Broncos offense has definitely been used to taking over that type of rule change. Something happened to my co-host. I think he's rebooting his system. So he'll be back in just a little bit. In the meantime, we're going to continue on with rule number 2. Shout out to all the audience over at TikTok. Make sure you guys give us a follow if you have any questions. And I think that's him. Hey, you back, buddy?
Yeah, like for some reason it kept on after you paused it. It just said the Packers, like it was on a remix.
All right. Moving on to the next rule, bro.
All right.
Packers have submitted a proposal to ban the tush push, a quarterback sneak play where teammates push the quarterback forward to gain short yardage. This tactic, notably used by the Philadelphia Eagles, has proven highly effective, but has raised concerns among teams regarding its impact on game balance and player safety. However, the league's internal data revealed there was a 0% injury rate with the play, so it is unlikely that the NFL will outlaw it.
So basically, it's kind of like what Libre said earlier. I don't think that they're going to ban the tush push. This is an issue that they've had since the Eagles won their first championship, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I don't know why they keep bringing this to the table, but it's not, the league's not going to do anything. And I hadn't even thought about those stats up until now, Libre. So I don't know why they keep persisting on this. I don't remember who were the team that's pushing this, but they're just swimming in circles on that one. They're probably not even going to listen to that, if I'm being honest.
They have to listen to it because the team is bringing it up. Yeah, of course it's here because we're talking about it now. But I agree with you as well. I don't think they're going to change this rule. The way I look at it as well, it's going to happen. Stop it. Like, you need to get out there, get your defensive linemen underneath those offensive linemen and get underneath them, getting that leverage and stop that tush push. Like, everyone knows when it's going to happen. Just do better. Like, I feel that that's what you need to do. And I don't think it's going to change. I think they're going to keep it in there. And honestly, like, who is in the line of actually getting hurt in this in particular play? Because really it's just getting in there and getting that leverage. And right now, the best team that's doing it is the Eagles. They've been doing it for years now, and they have just perfected it. It's because they're there in their practices during OTAs, whenever it is, they're there doing it and practicing it. So not all the other teams are doing it, and you could tell. Like, there's some teams that have tried it and haven't succeeded at all.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. But and for some reason, I don't think this is the last we'll hear of it. If it's not this team, don't be surprised if it makes the rounds and every single team puts that up for a vote every single season.
Yep.
All right. Moving on.
Regular season overtime rules. The Eagles have proposed changing regular season overtime. Currently, if the team that receives the ball first scores a touchdown, they win immediately, preventing the opposing team from having a possession. Data indicates that from 2017 to 2024, teams receiving the overtime kickoff won 56.8% of games, up from 55.4% between 2001 and 2011. To address this, the league is exploring options such as adopting overtime rules from the postseason, where both teams are guaranteed a possession regardless of an initial touchdown, and where the overtime period is 15 minutes. Playoff seeding. The Lions propose.
So I'm surprised that came from the Eagles. I thought that something like that would come from the Bills.
And I agree with this as well, because like, why would you have two different rules in overtime for the playoffs and one for the regular season? Like, I think it should just all be the same, because you're playing 18 games or 17 games throughout the season itself. And why now in the playoffs it changes? Let it all be the same. I understand what they're trying to accomplish throughout the season as well, is they want to eliminate how much time like some of the games are taking, because sometimes when you go into these overtime games that they do take a little bit longer. And of course, I think as well, it's part of that money, the TV money deal that they have, where if it's those morning games and they're running into the afternoon games, sometimes you have to, depending on how the market's set up and what their contracts are set up, is that they have to cut the game that's currently in overtime and go to, like, say for here in Denver, we have those afternoon games that here in the Denver market, you have to go to the Bronco game at the beginning of it. They can't continue playing that game. But at that point, use some type of an alternative channel to go to, even if it is, say, the NFL Network. Like, people that have the opportunity, especially if I'm a Chicago Bears fan here in Denver and wanting to watch the Chicago game, but because it's the Broncos and it gets cut off, like, now I'm forced to watch the Broncos, but I'm a Bears fan that want to watch the rest of that game. Give me an alternative channel at that point to watch it, how I know like ESPN has done. But again, that's on ESPN. But put it available on the NFL Network for people that have access to the NFL Network so that they're able to see the rest of their game. But I think that's the only thing that's why the rules might be the way they're set up, because of that TV contracts.
Right. Before I give my thought on it, I don't know if I read the chat before we started, so I do apologize. But D-Rock saying, Adon and Libre, D-Rock, my high salute to you, brother. Thank you so much for being here and always a loyal supporter of the show. Gary Neighbor saying, go Broncos. I think you meant to say country. Gary, thank you so much for being here. My high salute to you, my friend. Thanks so much for your continued support here on the show. But basically, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Libre. If it's going to be playoff, then it might as well be the same thing for the regular season, just as it is in the playoffs. Now, in the playoffs, I do understand that, obviously the game can't end in a tie. So even if there's no score in the first overtime, it goes in the second. Whereas during the regular season, if it ends in a tie, even in overtime, it's just considered a draw. Adding 15 minutes, that probably won't really make a difference. Me personally, I don't mind if they keep it the regular over or allotted overtime, but you bring the rest of the playoff seating rule or the playoff seating, the overtime, then I agree. If you want to make it 15 minutes, be my guest. But again, I'm surprised that this came from the Eagles because I don't remember them losing any games in overtime last season. If I'm trying, definitely wasn't the Super Bowl because they destroyed the Chiefs. God, I love saying that. So
well, and again, of course, they didn't lose any games that were affected to them during this year because they won it. It only affects like that overtime rule changes to the playoffs, you know. So, but I agree. But I don't know if they had going back to the regular season. Did they lose a game during the regular season because of that overtime rule? Because it was only the one and done.
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I wanted to say week 1, but they won that game. That was when Jordan Love got hurt in that nasty turf in Brazil.
Oh yeah.
So, but I don't know. But I mean, as long as there's a winner, because the one thing that I hate is when NFL games end up in a draw. Because in a draw, everybody loses. Both teams lose technically because they didn't win. Everybody that bet on them loses in Vegas. I lose in my confidence pool. The only people that probably win are people in fantasy because obviously the points still count at the end of the game. But aside from fantasy owners, then there's really no big thing. So if that is going to reduce the chance of a game ending in a tie, then I'm all for it. You know, obviously, it didn't say if it was going to go into like second overtime, but if it does, then hey, I'm all up for it. You know, I love watching football. The only thing where we as viewers might lose on is, you know, there's contractual obligations. So if a game does go into second overtime and it's not a playoff game, then, you know, they're going to take it off TV and then you have to sit there and watch the host kind of reading or, you know, telling you playing play by play like they've done in the past. And that's pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I think that's a good idea. I don't know if it'll pass though, to be honest with you, Libre, just for the simple fact that aside from the Buffalo Bills who probably support it 100%, I don't know, but I think that might be up in the air. But here we go with the next one.
Proposed changes to the playoff seeding process. Currently, division winners are guaranteed top playoff spots and home field advantage, which can result in teams with superior records playing on the road. For example, in the 2024 season, the 14-3 Minnesota Vikings had to play an away game against the 10-7 Los Angeles Rams due to the Rams winning their division. The proposed change should result in teams with better records receiving these higher seeds, even if they didn't win their division. Roster limit.
So basically, that was basically saying like the playoff seeding. I know this was a hot topic with everybody in playoffs in the NFL last year, especially going into the playoffs, because it was, as that video mentioned, the Vikings having a 14-3, having to go play the Rams, who had a less record than them. I think that this, to me, it makes sense. I would be for this, Libre, to be honest with you, but at the same time, I don't think it's a complete fix because you take from one to give to the other, but you're taking from the other to give to the one. Does that make sense?
The way I look at it as well, like even though like last year the Vikings just fell apart there at the end of the year itself, but like when you have these guys that are like they're playing to, hey, let's try to get that top seed, especially with it was between them and the Lions to get that top seed itself within their division. So being able to have whoever has the best record out there, now you're playing against, so you're not having these like mismatched games that you have these top two teams that are playing, say, in the second round of the playoffs. So by having them reseeded to these where you're in that, whoever has the best record going down for these playoff spots, I actually like it. And they earn to have, say, even with the Vikings, if they would have done this, say, reseeding of it and had them, say, in the third spot, they would have been hosting a home game. And I think that would have been a big difference between that game, we'll say, with the Rams, if that was the case. If they were in there in that same spot where if they had played each other. But I like where it's going to be, let's have the best two teams going into the AFC or NFC championship game, even though they are in the same division. Let them get there. And I actually like this rule because it's a reseeding to have them have a home game as opposed to being on a road game. I actually like it.
I think, again, I do like it. I'm just trying to figure out, like, if it happened to the Broncos, you know, like if let's say that was the Broncos, hypothetically speaking, that were the Vikings that had a really great record, let's say this coming up season, that could happen to them, you know. And even if they don't win the division and they're just like, or they're tied, but they don't exactly win the division, and then they have to go and play a team like the Rams record, I can see why this would be an issue and a problem, because technically it should be a home game for the Broncos, but instead it turns into a road game for them. And then, as you saw, the road games in the playoffs are really, really hard to win. Yeah. Okay, they're the hardest games to win in the NFL in the history of the NFL. You know, and as we saw, look what happened to Denver last year. They started off hot, but then they went cold, and a team like Buffalo ran them over. Same thing with the Vikings. They thought that they were going to wall up Los Angeles, and the Rams literally ran them out of Los Angeles. Yeah. So it was, well, technically it was in Arizona because of the LA Fires at the time, but still, home advantage in the playoffs goes really, really, it's like really important, you know, because it determines team seasons. So if they're going to pass this, they have to kind of get ready for the backlash. It might not happen right away, Libre, but it'll definitely happen when another team gets in that scenario. And then especially if it's a team that doesn't, well, we kind of have that issue with the wild card seeding.
Exactly.
Right now,
yeah.
You know, so that's a big issue with the wild card. Ever since they extended it by 2 spots, there are teams that just made it because they're barely, but the second they get into the super wild card weekend, they just get stomped and thrown out. We didn't really see it this year, but the last 2 years since it started, we saw teams like the Eagles, for example. They got walloped by Tampa Bay 2 years ago, and they came back, they turned it around, and they won the Super Bowl last year. So there are miracle stories, but again, there can only be one team that can win the Super Bowl.
No, I agree, and I actually look forward to it. I'm excited for it. I hope it does change, because it's going to be, I think it'll be more competitive. You'll be able to see more competitive football in the playoffs, and I think that's what we want, because we don't want to have teams coming into the playoffs and getting walloped like how some of these teams have. But as long as we see KC getting their butts whooped like what they did in the Super Bowl, I would like to see that all day, every day.
Agreed. Moving on.
The Lions have proposed a change to the roster limit rules. Currently, each team is allowed a 90-player roster during the offseason, which includes active players, practice squad members, and those on the injured reserve list. This means that players placed on injured reserve before the regular season still count against the 90-player limit. The Lions' proposal suggests that players placed on injured reserve before the roster cutdown should not count against this 90-player limit, unless they are designated for return during the season. This adjustment would allow teams to replace these players during the offseason, providing more opportunities to assess new talent without being constrained by the current roster cap. This proposal is particularly relevant for teams like the Lions, who had up to 21 players on injured reserve during the 2024 season. Free agency.
I mean, that makes sense. And that rule could have really helped the Broncos 5 years ago, when they were literally in that very same position where we had more players on IR than on the active roster. And Vic Fangio, our coach at the time, was literally picking players from practice squads and free agents, and literally just building a defense with just tape, with duct tape. So, I mean, it's an interesting thought. I never actually thought about increasing the player count. What are your thoughts?
Well, honestly, it's not about including more of the player count. It's more of not really counting the individuals that are on the IR itself.
Yeah.
Because the IR itself is counting against that 90, which I agree with that as well. I think that I actually didn't even know that was a rule, to be honest.
Yeah.
I thought they just had 90 active people and that was it, that were not part of the injured reserve. I agree that it, like how it said, if they are designated to be returned back during the season, then yes, it counts against them because they're going to be coming back. Say it's a starter like Alex Singleton. We had Alex Singleton out with a torn ACL, and he's going to be available at the beginning of the season or not, or he can be available say by week 4 of the season. So he's really going to be designated to come back, but because of his injury, he's on IR. Yes, I see that counting against it and so forth, which is fine. But some of these guys that that are not coming in here, but just because they're under contract and you can't release them unless you have some type of you have an agreement and do a medical release and pay out basically their contract. Because of that, a lot of these teams are like, you know what, they're not that much to pay these guys out because it's still going to count against your salary and all that. But I feel like if we can get these guys to be able to at least bring in more talent, how they said, to help the team be the best team possible and see that extra talent, because you never know what could happen with some of these guys, that they can just come in and take over a starter's job. And you don't know that. That's why you bring these guys in. And if they're being limited to the number of guys because of how many people they have on injured reserve, I support this 100%. And I hope that this does pass through.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Up until I saw that, I did not know that the 90-person playoffs count was including IR.
I didn't either.
I didn't. I thought that the 90 players were like, okay, they're players that they got undrafted, that they signed, through waivers or free agents, and because we see a lot of these players in the preseason. Because obviously after week 4, it has to be cut down to 53. So, I would like to see that go through, me personally, just for the simple fact that it's no team's fault that the players get hurt. Okay, you and I kind of talked about this before the show, that the one thing that no team can count on is injuries. So. And that's an unfortunate thing when you have to put your star player, especially if it's a star player, that hurts even more. When you have to put a player or players, in the case of San Francisco last year, on IR, and the number of IR players starts to grow, unfortunately, almost as high as what you have on your current roster in terms of stars, and not seconds or thirds that you have to fill in. And it's basically just holding your team together with duct tape. Again, I keep using that analogy. So I hope it does go through. That way it can give teams a better chance of filtering players before after preseason, because it's really hard. We as fans, we don't really see it and we don't really feel it, but you got to put yourself in these players' shoes, especially in preseason. And I kind of always get a little irritated when people say, well, it's preseason, who cares? I used to be one of those people at one point, but then I ate a lot of crow when I started, seeing that this is where coaches find their 2s and 3s, and in some cases, undiscovered players. All right.
Absolutely.
And if they don't see it, another team sees it. And then when it's time to cut these players, that same player that was really looking good on your team is now playing for the other team, so it's a really important thing to do. And unfortunately, it sucks that not everybody can go through and that the roster limit goes down to 53. But those players kind of just they kind of stay afloat somehow, because you never know. They might get called up in a pinch if a team really needs them, or they might come back or, go to the UFL or play somewhere else and then come back and try again next year for the NFL.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate life of an NFL player. But moving on.
Negotiations. The Steelers have proposed a rule change to free agency negotiations. Currently, teams are allowed to negotiate only with the agents during the 2-day negotiation period before free agency officially begins. Direct contact with the players themselves is prohibited. This limitation can lead to miscommunications or delays in agreements. The proposed change would allow teams to have one video or phone call with both the agent and the player during this period, facilitating clearer discussions and more efficient negotiations. Scouting rule change.
Yeah, that's another thing I didn't know, Libre. I thought that it was always, talent agent and player. I didn't know that it was just team and your agent, and then your agent was the one that relayed the deal to the player. That's kind of new to me.
So that's how I always thought how it was from day one. But again, I always see like the tampering period itself, like these guys that are so close knit within the NFL itself that coaches are talking with these players and then talking with their agents. Like, to tell me that that's not happening, you're not looking at it properly, because
Libre, unfortunately, he cut off again. So while he configures his setup, I'm going to continue give my thought on it. So basically, I didn't know that it was you could communicate with that. You only communicated with the agent, and then once the deal or negotiations, the agent relays it back to the player. I think that that's actually a good rule change if you make it, because I mean it's the player, it's themselves. So why would you not have them included in it? And then you wouldn't run the risk of doing this whole thing with tampering, and teams were talking to so and so player before, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Chiefs and some other team were accused of doing the whole tampering before the period started. So I'm all for it, because if I was a player, I'd want to be kept. Excuse me. I want to be kept in the loop of things, and if I can be there during the call, then even better. That way, I can tell my agent, "Hey, this works for me. This doesn't work for me. Let's go back to the drawing board. We'll come back." That type of thing. Instead of saying, "Hey, I talked to the team that's interested in you, and this is what we got." And it's kind of like, well, you have to decide whether you want it, or tell your agent, "No, I don't want to go back to them and tell them to make it better," or something. But if you can have both parties there and get it done right away, I'm all for that, Libre.
Exactly. I agree with it as well. But like I was mentioning earlier, I feel like this already happens already with the league itself, and it's just not talked about. But again, like how you're saying, like how there are teams that have gotten caught with the tampering period itself, and they have lost draft picks because of it. Just don't get caught. But the thing is, I do like this rule because it's already happening to me. So if we can just make sure that it's legal and have it and just how you said, being the player, yes, I want to know what is really being said, because like it says, it's that miscommunication, the lack of information. At least you're able to yourself can go in there and talk and say, "Hey coach, what about this?" Or "What's going on with this? What about we do this? Like, what's happening with maybe the playbook or whatever?" Like, at least you can gauge what's happening within the team before you actually go into any type of negotiation, so that you can work your deal in. What's going to be my role here? Am I going to be the number one? Am I number two? Like, I actually like it a lot.
And our friend Jay jumping in here, he says tush push should be utilized more. No homo. LOL. Jay, thank you so much for being here. My high salute to you, brother. And he's going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. And it's like Libre said, and Libre's not the only one that said this too. It's a lot of players that say, if you don't like it, stop it. Okay. Yeah. Because even if let's say, hypothetically speaking, the league decides to ban the tush push, some team's going to come out with another play that's going to be even just as bad or worse than said tush push. And then they're going to be complaining all over about it. Okay. If you watch carefully, I forget the name of that Rams player that actually stopped it last year, but because he was half a second, he jumped off the line, it was called back. But if he'd have waited, he would have actually stopped the tush push from happening, because he jumped over the line and got to Jalen Hurts before he dove. So there are ways to beat it. Timing is the most important thing of it all, and just finding a way to do it.
Yeah.
But let's be honest here, folks. Even if you don't use the tush push, if the opposing team gets to your goal line and it's inches, they don't even have to do the tush push. The quarterback can just kind of stretch the ball over, and that's it. That's a touchdown. Yeah. So what are you gonna do? You want them to ban tall quarterbacks from stretching over? Like you need something of a miracle where they don't decide to do something like that, and they try to do something some kind of quick trick play that backfires, But hey, we in this league have seen pretty much everything, Libre.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Changes. The Commanders have proposed a rule change to scouting. Currently, teams on the verge of making the playoffs face challenges in scouting late-season games due to restrictions on credentialing, limiting them to gather first-hand information on potential playoff opponents. The proposed change would allow these teams on the verge of making the playoffs to obtain these scouting credentials for 2 consecutive games in weeks 17 and 18, focusing on potential postseason opponents. Additionally, the change mandates that teams hosting wildcard games must grant scouting credentials to all other postseason teams within the same conference. K-balls.
Now, that one I kind of didn't really understand, Libre, so maybe you did, and you can elaborate a little bit for me. But that's honestly, the second time I watched it, and I kind of didn't get it.
I don't get it as well. It's like, what are they trying to get, like, credentials with scouting-wise? Like, being able to go to the facilities and scout, or like that's something I don't get. Like part of it, you have, like, when I'm looking at this and you're a scout, like I'm looking at scout as the players coming onto your team. Is it just trying to review film of these other guys that are say it's illegal Spygate? Okay, so yeah, and that's real. And was that the Patriots that did that, or is that Belichick now in college? So.
I think, not to cut you off, Libre, I'm sorry. I think what that means is it would give teams. So let's say the Broncos make it to the playoffs, or they're going to make it to the playoffs, and they're going to face Buffalo for sure. Then I think that would give them permission to kind of start looking at the teams in terms of coming up with plays or their players or game film. I think that's what that means, especially since Dreamweaver said it's legal Spygate, because that's almost what I think it is, with the exception of them actually going and recording their practices or whatever. But I think what it means by that is that it would give teams like 2 weeks before. It said week 17 and week 18. I don't really know. There are some games that are still up for grab in terms of playoff position week 18. Not as much as week 17. Week 17 is the most critical because that's the one that most teams secure, they clinch a spot, So,
well, they might have clinched a spot itself, but the seeding might be where it's so close that even week 18, depending on if you win or lose, can put you to number 3 to number 8. You never know. Mm-hmm. So, even with that itself that's why they said at least if depending on who your opponent could potentially be, giving them those type of credentials. I don't know if I like this at all, because why? Like, you have all this film from all season long that a lot of things are not going to change.
Dreamweaver jumps back in. He says they all get tape of games already. The difference is allowing teams to get documentation on the opponent's sidelines, quote unquote sign stealing. Think Michigan football last year.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't watch college football, but Libre, I think you do. You were saying
no, and I get that itself. So it's like getting more in depth, like I was saying like earlier. That's that Spygate, like getting that extra videos of the sidelines and all that, because those do tend to change a little bit there at the end of the year as well to help that with that advantage. So, but yeah, to me, I'm still. I don't understand it a lot, but I don't like just off the top of my head, I don't like it. You have film already of the actual plays. Yeah.
I think whatever the rule is currently, just leave it the way it is. When I first saw that, I thought it went scouting like college or, free agent or something like that. And it totally went a whole different direction. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. That's my theory on that. Moving on.
7 teams, including the Ravens, Browns, Texans, Eagles, Raiders, Vikings, and Commanders, have proposed a rule change on preparing K-balls. K-balls are specific footballs designated solely for kicking plays. Currently, teams are required to prepare these balls within a 60-minute window on game days, adding pressure to equipment staff during critical pregame periods. The change would allow teams to prepare K-balls before game day, similar to the process permitted for other balls, eliminating the first down penalty.
Oh, then it kind of reset. So that was the last one. So Libre,
Well,
what do you think?
So I knew about this because those balls, like when they're brand new, they're so slippery and so forth. They have either it's the kicker himself or the punter, or they have their own personnel, like the equipment manager, are working in those balls to make sure that they're broken in and so forth. I didn't know that it was a 60 minute window. I know it was the same day that they were doing it, but what I think having them say have the day before so that's like available, and having say some type of NFL official or some type of NFL rep monitoring what they're doing to the balls and breaking them in, if they're just rubbing them in, like, just breaking them down, making sure that they're not tampering with the actual ball itself. And then after they're done with that, handing those balls back over to the NFL official so that they can be used during game day. So at the beginning of, when they get to the stadium, like the officials will say, all right, here are your guys' kickballs.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that this was a thing. I'm surprised at how much I'm learning about the NFL. I got to give that guy a follow before I forget. But
hey,
yeah,
send that
I
to
would
me
imagine.
too.
I'm sorry?
Send that to me, that video. Send that to me on TikTok. So because I want to follow that guy too, because I want to see a lot
I
of
will too.
videos. Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that this was a thing. Like getting the kickballs ready an hour before the game is kind of crazy. Like what happens if like something happens to that shipment and it doesn't make it to the game? Then what the hell are you gonna do? And you only have an hour until kickoff. So Dreamweaver jumping in here saying the difference is allowing those balls to get pressurized to the weather conditions of the day instead of levels 24 hours before kickoff. Well, to me it doesn't sound like I would rather much. I'm actually okay with this just for the simple fact that you have it ready. I mean, if you do want to pressurize them or change them or do whatever you have to do, then you can do it 1 hour before. But then again, I really don't, on the other hand, I don't think it's like a giant necessity where this is something that has to be absolutely necessary. I mean, they've been doing this since I want to say the inception of football, or since whenever field goals were starting to be kicked. I have no idea how
So
long.
these balls, the K-balls are something that's a little bit newer because these are now specific balls that are not on every down plays. So these are special balls that are used just for the kickers itself, for those that type of situation. So that part is new. So, but even with these though, they're still brand new. I don't know if you've ever held or touched a brand new NFL football, it is slippery as hell, because of the leather. So that's why they have the equipment managers and so forth, or anybody trying to break those in so they're not as slippery. So when the QB goes out there or the center gets the ball, that they're able to actually grip it and whatnot. So that's really what it comes down to as well. Like you want to have these kickballs because you don't want to have the ball where it's like if you're kicking the long snapper is sending it to the punter, not accidentally fumbling it or whatever the case may be. So I agree with this. I think they should at least have that time frame to do it, like that, say 24 hours in advance to do that. But again, you have to remember, like Colorado here in Denver, we're a mile high above sea level, and what that means is that we have thin air here and it's dry here. So with that being said, like here with the Rockies, they literally have to have a humidor for the baseballs, because if not, it dries out the baseballs. That's why we were called the Blake Street Bombers back in the late 90s and so forth, because of the ball being so much lighter. And then when you hit that ball, it was skyrocketing out of home runs left and right. So, and that's kind of what happens here as well. Even with these, with the NFL balls, there's a little bit of change, and it still has an effect on any type of material or whatnot. So having that set up, I feel like it's only going to benefit the league itself, and at least helping out with players. Players are going to love it. I know that they will.
The play that comes to mind, Libre, when you mentioned it, I don't know if you remember that play, but it was, I think it was a playoff game between the Cowboys and I forget who else. And Tony Romo, I think, bobbled the snap, or the ball was bobbled or something, and he tried to throw it and it just obviously it didn't go where it was good to go, and the Cowboys lost the game. So that's what comes to mind. I only remember that because it gets ridiculed by by people so much on social media. But at the same time, I now have an understanding of what the guy with the vest that says K on it. Now I know what his job is.
Yeah.
Because up until now, I didn't know who he was. I thought he was just the regular guy that cleans the footballs, and throws them back to the refs when they reset for the next down.
Yeah.
But again, do you want to change or mess with something that doesn't really I'm trying to think, would it be like a drastic change if this does pass, Libre?
So the thing is, we're not going to see that change.
Yeah.
As a consumer of the game, we're not going to see that change as the way that it's set up. Because that's something that we don't see. Like just how you said, like, oh, now I understand the guy that has the K vest on the field. But we're not going to see that change. It's really within the team and those players that are going to be seeing the difference of that itself. That's where the true change would be seen for those guys itself. Us as fans, we're not seeing any of that itself because, again, we don't know what they're doing with the balls between the time that they get them to before the game starts and whatnot. And that's why I was saying if they want to have this where it's a 24-hour the day before and they're able to do that, making sure it's done legally, like they're not tampering with the balls to have some type of competitive advantage where you're having an actual official from the NFL viewing what they're doing with that time frame that they're using it and then returning it back to the NFL. So on game day, then they're returned back to them, So I feel for us as consumers, we're not seeing no changes. It's not going to be affecting us as what we're seeing on the field. Well, potentially it can because depending on what they do, but what we see as rule changes or other stuff like that we could see happening on the field or whatnot, this is one thing that us as fans are not going to be impacted a lot by.
I mean, I believe it, and I definitely see it happening. Well, and see it happening, like you said, we're not going to see it out here in Broncos country, but the second, if it does pass, and the second something comes up about the whole thing, with the Colts and the Patriots a couple of years ago, then it's going to be an unnecessary something gate, ball gate, or whatever they called it.
Deflate gate.
Deflate gate. Thank you. I couldn't think of the name. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get a little bit started earlier than normally do for this segment. It's your segment. It's Libre and I's favorite segment. Ladies and gentlemen, the score is tied, which means this show cannot end because we have to go into overtime. And basically, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, it is basically Libre and me letting our hair down if we had long hair and just kind of basically unwinding and letting out any frustrations, anything we want to get off the top of our head. Free roam. If we can find a way to tie it back to the Broncos, we definitely will, but no guarantees. Libre, I got a good one for you, buddy.
All right.
This is something I actually forgot to talk about last week. Have you ever noticed, when people ask you something really dumb, especially if you're at work and you want to say something smart, but you can't because you're at work?
Yes and no. I could say it. There's some people you have to know who you're talking to, I guess. Especially at work, you have to know who you're talking to and whatnot. There's times where people ask me a question that they've asked me, say, 5 times within the last several weeks. And I said, do you have a goldfish memory? Because that's how you're acting right now. We just literally talked about this last week. How come you can't retain this? This guy that used to do it at my office all the time. There's times where I went up to it and I I belittled him. Like, I go, how many times do I have to explain this to you? I go, it's not rocket scientists. It's the same thing that I've explained to you multiple times already. Like, why can't you retain this? It's not that hard. He was like, I don't know. Like, you catch him off guard when you do that. And I'm just happy that he's no longer with my company, because he made it hell at times, because some of the questions he was asking.
I got one better than that. So as you guys know, my full-time job is I work at a hotel. Been there for going on 13 years in May. So been there a long time. And one of the side things I do to help out is my normal job is I guess you can call it a houseman. I work conference services. That's my main what I do. But on the side, when they need help working the pool desk, I go and I sit, and it's basically me sitting, like if this is the pool desk, just a giant desk, and I make sure that people sign in, that they're actually hotel guests, because it's not open to any person. You have to be a hotel guest to either swim or use the workout rooms we have. So in this building, it's in a separate building, so you have to walk outside the hotel, walk across the parking lot to get to this building. So we have signs everywhere that say that this is the spa building, but it also includes the pool, the fitness rooms, and we have our own bowling alley. So when you walk in the door, the pool is on your left, the straight ahead is the desk where I sit at, and on the right side is the spa. You can see everything. There's glass everywhere. This one guy walks in, and he's not the first one. He's probably like the third or fourth one since I started doing this job for like the last 3 years. Just walks in, looks over to his left, sees the pool, bright as hell, through the glass, and without hesitation says to me, "Is this where the pool's at?"
Does it bear shit in the woods?
I had to look down and keep myself from saying smart, because I wanted to say to him, "No, this is where we dip the golf carts and wash them and just pull them right back out."
Oh my gosh! Like, yeah,
oh man,
I
have to bite my tongue and say, yeah, this is where the pool, right?
It's like, do you see little kids jumping from the side?
Oh man, and the same thing, vice versa. When people come in, is this where the spa's at? Spa's literally right on the right hand side, giant sign that says the spa.
That's funny.
Oh man, I'm telling you, like, common sense nowadays is just so oh man. D-Rock saying, I forgot to mention it, but this hat that I'm wearing is sick. I know, thank you. I got it while I was in Denver. It is dope as hell. I blame Libre, because when I was in Colorado last year, there were so many hats I wanted to buy, and I didn't buy them because, first of all, I'm an idiot. And I said to myself, it's going to be cold at the game against the Panthers, and I want to wear my Scully. I don't want to wear a hat with this. And sure enough, where our seats were, the sun is beaming down right on me, and I'm sitting there and I'm holding my cup against my face so to create shade. Bet you should. Wish you would have bought that hat. Huh? I was like, be quiet, boy. I just gotta wait for the sun to move a little bit that way. Be fine. But see, my thing is, I didn't buy it because I didn't want to stuff it in my suitcase. Because you guys know, if you put something nice like a hat, especially a fitted hat, it's gonna get squished to high hell, and then it'll be flat as a pancake. And I didn't want to put it in my bag. I should have bought it. I wish I did, because obviously here in Chicago, like, they only have one Broncos style hat, and that's the blue and orange one, blue with the orange bill.
Yeah.
But in Denver, they have, oh my God, just thinking about it, they had the black one, they had the white one, they had this one, which I bought 2 years before when I was there.
Can you see all the hats that I have?
Yeah. Hey, and see, the thing that kills me the most is, like, some of the really cooler ones, unfortunately, are not fitted. They're the ones where you buckle them in the back. And I can't wear those because my head is too fat for those. So So unfortunately, I can't wear those. All my hats, you can't see it because it's dark in here, but they're fitted. But yeah, it's just like I gotta get new hats, man. I think Lids will ship them. I keep forgetting to go and actually buy it if I'm not mistaken. But I think you have to go through online for that if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think, yeah. But again, like you can go to New Era, you can go to like Fanatics, you can even go, I think they may even have some on the Broncos shops, like the actual team store itself. I have a question. We have Alex Moreno on TikTok asking us a question. He goes, how close are we on getting Von Miller back to Denver? All I've been seeing are fake news. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's actually a very good question. And I think it was Kay Adams who I thought for a second this morning spilled it. And I thought it was breaking news. But if my phone doesn't do that chime where it's like, it's not authentic, or it's not Adam Schefter, or it's not one of the, excuse me, guys.
Tom Pelissero.
The accredited guys. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. If I had to guess, I think it has to do something with money. It has to do either something with money from Von Miller's side, or it has to do something where the Broncos coaching staff maybe doesn't have a spot for him in terms of, bring him. Because if Von does come to Denver, even though he's still on the Bills books, they're going to want to try to restructure something from him, or there's got to be something that has to be worked out because Von Miller's not going to come over here for free. So you have one of two things. Either Von Miller wants a little bit more money from the Broncos, aside from what he's already getting paid from the Bills, which I don't really think is the likely choice. The one that I think is the likely option is that Broncos management somewhere doesn't really have a need for him, because if they did, Von would already have been here, and Von knows that he is always more than welcome to come back home to Denver. As long as he doesn't go to the Chargers, the Raiders, or the Chiefs, I'm okay if he goes to another team.
I agree with you with that. But for me, yes, Kay Adams did have that interview with him, and he's talking about, the Broncos and how much he loves the Broncos. And that's been since the day that we traded him to the Rams. So that hasn't changed in the last 3.5 years that has happened. So, but for me, Von Miller, like for the nostalgia part of it, like, yes, I would like to have him back on the team, but just because of his namesake and so forth. But do you actually think that Peyton is really going to be giving Von Miller a roster spot and removing him and removing someone else that is younger with, because he likes that youth movement itself? I feel like if, because of that movement, he loves that youth movement, that we're not going to bring him in. We're not going to do that. What we'll end up doing at some point when he's ready to retire, he'll get that one-day contract so he can retire as a Bronco. But to actually be part of the team, I don't think that's going to happen. As much as everyone wants that to happen, it's not going to happen. It's just the same thing with Justin Simmons.
If the only way I can see the Broncos possibly bringing Von Miller back is, excuse me, if they don't get whoever their target guy is in the draft. Because the draft is the last chance for the Broncos to get a really good outside linebacker that can be, and maybe not even really good, it could be green around the edges, so to speak. But then again, that's almost every single player you get from the draft that can get somebody that can fit into that rotational piece with Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito. So I do think it's more from the Broncos staff themselves in terms of thinking why he doesn't have a spot on this roster. Anything could change. Keep that in mind. Tomorrow we could all wake up and it could be breaking news. It could happen overnight, and then we'll all be celebrating Von's return back to the Broncos, or we could be just clapping our hands that he signed to another team again that isn't the AFC West rival. But speaking of former Broncos players, Russell Wilson to the Giants, I think, was probably the funniest thing to have ever happened to Russell Wilson. I don't know how the hell he didn't convince Pittsburgh to keep him another year, especially when they got DK Metcalf and George Pickens. George Pickens and Russell Wilson had more chemistry than Justin Fields and Pickens did. Yes, Fields and Pickens had their moments, but Russell and Pickens were just like hand in hand. And the Steelers were going to get him for another year for the vet minimum at the most. So I don't know why the Giants are the Giants, but just when you think that they couldn't be like an ostrich and stick their head into the ground any further, that ostrich is damn near feet dangling and digging his head all the way to the opposite side of the earth. Okay. Russell Wilson has no business going to the Giants. I mean, aside from Malik Neighbors, who's like a Cadillac outside an abandoned warehouse, it doesn't make sense. Like, why the hell did they trade for Jameis Winston?
And that's another. There's not even a trade.
Or not trade. Sorry, sign.
They signed him, but I agree with you 100%. Like, I don't know what they're planning on, what they're doing there, and right away, people are already saying that they have no intentions of signing a quarterback. Wait, you just got Russell Wilson for 1 year. You have Jameis Winston for 2. If you still are I think they're in the 3rd position right now. Why wouldn't you still not get a quarterback at that position? Because you're still have to look at your future. Like right now, if you're still going to stick with these 2 guys, you really don't have a future at your quarterback at this point. But it still surprised me why Russell Wilson went there as well. And you know what? I need to look into it a little bit more because he signed a guaranteed $10.5 million contract. It's guaranteed, that's guaranteed up to $21 million with all these incentives and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know, does that guaranteed money come off of our books as well, off of our dead cap money? Like, what if is it only the salary and then that's guaranteed where it's like a bonus, a signing bonus or whatever? Like, that's something I need to look into more because none of the reports that I saw indicated anything like that of what is the Broncos' responsibility and now what are the Giants' responsibility, because it is guaranteed money at this point.
Yeah, it's only for a year. I mean, I honestly don't care if it does or it doesn't because his chunk of change from our pocketbook is still a lot of money. And it's a lot of money because it's a player that's not even on our fucking roster.
But the thing is, like, no, you're okay. But I get that. But like them signing him to a contract like that, like some of that money has to now come away from the Broncos because the Broncos are not responsible for part of that money. So is it just like his base salary that it's going to be there?
I have no idea. To be
so that's why I'm saying like I have to look into that a little bit more because not a lot of information has come out since he signed. So that's something that I want to look into it more to see if we do get more money back because of that signing.
I'm sure somebody on Twitter will bring it up. If not, I'll probably hear it on one of the other Broncos podcasts because there's somebody that's definitely knows about cap space and all that mess. But I just want Russ to get his money because after 2025, the Broncos are off the hook. And nobody is going to pay him anywhere near what he was making in Denver. Nowhere. This whole $20 million a year thing, ain't no team going to give him that. Especially, I know it's early, but I don't see the Giants as contenders as good as Malik Neighbors is. If Russell Wilson couldn't do it with George Pickens, who is a really good wide receiver besides his shenanigans on and off the field and his temper tantrums and all that, I just don't see it. I don't see it, and I don't see why they would bring in it kind of, to be honest with you, it's kind of like what Denver did 3 years ago when they got Russell Wilson, when they signed what's his name, our backup quarterback, Stidham, thank you. Where they signed him to a pretty big, contract for a backup anyway, at least to me. And then they brought in Russell Wilson, who just cost a whole treasure chest full of picks and money. And then later on, before the season started, before he even threw a football for the Broncos, just guaranteed money at that, which made it even worse. Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, man.
Well, we talked about that too, because like when we got him over here, we thought with the expectation that when we traded for him, that he was still going to be a good serviceable back. Mm-hmm. So when we did that, I can see why George Payton did that. Is he goes, look, you're coming in here before you even play it down with us. We're going to extend you because we have all this faith in you, and you're going to be our quarterback of the future, and you don't have nothing to worry about. So that's why they did that. I get it. I understand why they did it. It sucks now that we know the reality of what happened. And it happens. Sometimes it happens. Those are those busts. It's sometimes like with the draft, when you go out there and you draft the number one guy and he's not that the guy that you expected that he was going to be with the performance. But going back to your comment about why the Steelers didn't re-sign him for this one more year, honestly, I think it's DK. I think there could have been something there with DK that he goes, you know what, I don't want Russell here. Because, sometimes, even though they don't say that they don't get words from other players or whatnot, I don't believe that. They go to their players. What do you feel if we're going to go bring this guy in? Tell us what you think about it. I guarantee they probably went to DK and said, DK, give us the story. Like, should we bring him back in? Would you like to have him here? You guys had all that success there in Seattle. Would you want him to be here? And I think he said no.
I see that. I could totally see that, and I get it. But you move on from Russell if that's the case, but you don't keep Justin Fields. That, to me, doesn't make any sense. And now you're going to go forward saying that Mason Rudolph and Shaq Thompson are going to be in a quarterback competition for the starting position, and Aaron Rodgers is still dangling like a carrot out there. I mean, I don't know. Like, something in Pittsburgh stinks, and I just don't know what to make of it.
I think right now, this is Mike Tomlinson's ride or shine moment right now. Like, what are you going to do with that? Because you have not had a losing season there in Pittsburgh in the 18 years that you're the head coach. This might be the year that might be do it, and this might be also your last year. And they're like, all right, thank you for your services, and we're going to go another direction. And I definitely see that. Aaron Rodgers, I stopped following him. Like, he likes to have all of the NFL talking about him. That's why he goes into this dark mode and so forth. And he just likes to have that attention. Even though, like, he tries to say he separates himself and he's away, gets disconnected, guaranteed he's in the background saying, all right, what are they saying today? What are they talking about today? Where am I going now? Where are the rumors at? That, I feel like that's how he's been the last several years. Even with the rumors when we were potentially, quote unquote, trading for him, like in 21 or 22 or something like that.
Yeah. And, just to add one more thing, something funny that happened to me at work today, or not work, at the store, because I'm on vacation. So I went to the store with my mom, and as we walk in, there was this guy, like an older gentleman, just standing there. And me and my mom walked past him, and the guy's just staring at. Now, I can tell when people stare at me, and people from everywhere stare at me. I'm used to it. But this guy was just kind of staring at me, just looking me up and down. And I looked at him, and I didn't say anything to him. I just said hi to him. And I turned around, and he comes up to behind me, and he's like, have you ever thought about playing football for the Bears? And I start cracking up, and I'm like, no, I'm too old for that, bro. And he's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, the Bears could use you. And I'm like, sir, I'm wearing a Broncos hat. Got my Broncos thing. I always walk out with something Broncos on my face or my head. I'm like, I'm not a Bears fan. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, you should have played in the NFL. I was like, bro, like, if I had $1 for every time somebody told me I should play in the NFL, I should have played in the NFL, excuse me. I should have been in the NBA. I should have been a wrestler. I would have, like, Jeff Bezos money right now. So freaking rich.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody said that.
Like, again, I don't know if I ever talked about this before, but I don't realize how big I am until somebody points it out. Because to me, I just feel like I'm one of like everybody else. Like I'm insignificant. But it's not until somebody says that I'm bigger than them, that I'm taller than them, that I'm stronger than them, that something more than them. And it's like, oh yeah, that you mentioned it. I guess I am.
Well, I don't understand why you don't understand it, because you're always looking down on people.
Well, yeah, but
I'm just
it's like, for those, if anybody's ever met my brother's been on the show before. If you go back to like the very early tapes of MHRT, and we're like two big dudes, and when the very rare chance where we do play football, like we're never on the same team. We can never be on the same team. For the simple fact that if we were, it'd be totally unfair. We'd be getting to the quarterback at almost every play. But I think that's going to do it for today, guys. Well, D-Rock jumping in saying the QB market is so atrocious in the NFL. Russ and Rodgers has the league in a stronghold. They are over the hill.
100%.
They are, but you got to remember that Aaron Rodgers is still on the Jets books for a long time. And it's not that teams don't want him because of the money. They just don't want him because they don't want to deal with all the crap that comes with Aaron Rodgers. It's the reason why he's not with the Jets, and you got to be, and before we head out of here, you got to be thinking that the Packers are licking their chops and just laughing, because I'm pretty sure that somewhere they warned the Jets like, hey, you guys don't know what you're getting into. But the Jets, they didn't care. They just signed the check and sent it in the mail. And I'm pretty sure they're regretting it, and they're going to regret it for what? I think Aaron Rodgers is on their books for like another 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So, and they've already had to pay him for 1 year where he didn't play. And then last year where he did play, but he played like crap for most of the year. And now they're going to have to pay him for 2 more years because he's going to go play somewhere else probably. And even if he doesn't, he's going to be paid to just sit at home as a free agent. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm glad that we didn't get him when it came to Denver. The whole Russell experience was terrible, except for his last year in Denver, where it started to look like it was on the mend. But Sean Payton didn't want him, so he convinced the powers to be to ship him out of here. So good luck to him with the Giants. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our show today. Libre and I would like to thank everybody in our chat. D-Rock, Napoleon, I guess I can thank you because you actually made a comment, even though it's spam. Jay the Dream Dreamweaver, I think is his name, and Gary Neighbors. Oh, by the way, you guys make sure you catch Jay. I think the episode is tomorrow. He's going up against the he's going up against the main man himself on Mike Carmelini's Media Battles channel on YouTube. It is going to be great. You don't want to miss it. Jay is going to be up to bat for us here on the Orange and Blue Network. So please make sure you show your support, subscribe, share, comment, and like, because you do not want to miss when that goes live, and especially to see Jay's reaction next Tuesday on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast. And you can only see it here on the Orange and Blue Network. So please make sure you continue to show your support. Also, for our sister station, MHRT Network, who we do a simulcast on, please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on all their channels and shows. Your support is very well appreciated. Shout out to our sponsor of W. Make sure you use the code NRWOB10 to get 10% off on your order at checkout. Thanks again to W for being a sponsor of this show and all the shows here on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue Networks. If you want to hit us up on our socials, they're right there at the bottom for Twitter. Mine is at a 6'10" Mexican. Yes, it's true because I really am. Bronco Libre is Bronco Libre at 5280. And it's 5280 because he's the only member that lives in Denver, which is hard to believe. For those of you listening to us on audio, please make sure you send us a screenshot, 5-star review. Send it to us so Libre and I can give you a shout out. As we always say here, please make sure you continue to show your support for all forms of Broncos media, articles, videos, podcasts, all that good stuff. They and we all together could really, really use your support. So if there's a podcast or a show or something that you watch that you think other people should watch, put out on your social medias, on your TikToks or whatever. Let us know so we can share it and spread the good word to the world. Also, shout out to our audience here on TikTok, if anybody's still here on my side.
Thank you guys so much.
But thank you guys so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for all the likes. Ladies and gentlemen, This has been Broncos Talk on the Orange and Blue and MHRT Network. So for Bronco Libre, I'm Adan Diaz. Have a good night, good day, whenever it is you're watching or listening to. And as we always say, go Broncos!
Go Broncos!
Woo!